All right. So, hello viewers. Today, the guest who have joined us is Mr. Chris Croft, world's leading sales and marketing consultant and leadership coach, and a phenomenal author of 10 books. So, you have written 10 books or 11 books?
Yeah, quite a few. It depends whether you count the sort of small ones I've been doing, like my little project
Management, right?
mini book. But I have been doing some quite big books,
Time
like
management,
time management and project management. That's
Project
that's a
management,
proper published one, and happiness.
happiness,
And
right?
one of my favorites is Management Vegetables, which is a very strange book.
Straight book, right?
Yeah, and then most recently I've been doing one on how to live your life, which I can't see in front of me at the moment, but 7 Paths to Happiness. So
Right.
I've been, oh yeah, this one here. Yeah. So I think maybe my favorite.
7 Paths to Happiness, right?
Yeah. About what is a good career? What is a good job
Right.
for your happiness? Because I think a lot of people go into work, they think, I have to earn money, and
Right.
and maybe they become a manager, or they don't like being a manager. And I think it's important to think about where your life's going to go rather than just letting it happen by accident and then deciding you don't like it. So that's what that one's about. So yeah, been busy writing.
So viewers, as you know that he's a best-selling author and 16 million people he has inspired, and a lot of student and actually sales trainer he is. So Chris Croft, sir, welcome to the podcast first of all.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And Chris, sir, you have written books upon project management, time management, happiness, sales. So what are your advices to the leaders who want to inspire or motivate their team to get their work done successfully or efficiently? So what are your insights or advices for these sort of leaders, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, leadership's a really big subject. So much written about leadership. I haven't written a book on leadership because there are hundreds of books out there already. I think just do the basics. Like, for example, most bosses, they never even thank people, do they? I've had bosses who've never thanked me. And, maybe I was just a terrible employee, but occasionally you do something good, don't you? And if you just thank them occasionally, they'll do more of the good things and you can thank them more. And I think a lot of bosses think you don't need to thank people. Well, they're being paid. Do I need to thank them as well? Yeah. And so I think basic things like thanking people and I think involving people as well. So bosses quite often, they make all the decisions themselves. Yeah. And they just tell you, right, Raunak, we're doing this today. Right. And if they only just said, even if they just said, I'm thinking of doing this, what do you think? Have I missed anything? Or this is the problem. What do you think? What should we do? And involve, should we work on it together? You'd feel important then, and you'd have ownership of the answer and you'd care. And instead, they don't often involve people. And if they involved us, we would feel more important, and we'd feel more engaged with the answer. We'd probably feel more secure as well if we were involved more. Because if they don't involve you, you'd feel like a number, and they could get rid of you anytime they want, couldn't they? So I just think a bit of thanking, a bit of involving. I don't think it's that difficult to be a good boss, but there aren't very many good bosses out there. Maybe just to think about the process of being a boss, because I think a lot of bosses come to work and they think, right, my job is to make sure everybody's working and to solve any problems that are too big for the people. So if they come to me, I'll solve the problem, and they think that's it. And they don't ever stand back and think, am I a good leader? Are my people motivated? Am I doing this right? They don't think about the process of being a leader. They just react to whatever happens that day. And I think, just to go on any management course, I remember the first leadership course I went on, I was amazed. Because I'd been a boss for several years then and was making it up as I went along. And suddenly I realized, I discovered that there were all these theories about this is how you do this. And I just didn't know any of it. And I was in charge of people and, messing up their lives, because your boss can ruin your life, can't they? I mean, I've read somewhere that bosses are the biggest cause of unhappiness in people's lives, usually. It's not their wife or their husband, it's their boss at work.
Right.
And so, if they just kind of went on a course, that would probably amaze them. And then think about what it's like to be a boss. There's one theory of management I think is really interesting, and people used to believe that it was called trait theory. So they used to believe that good bosses had certain personality traits,
right? And
they spent ages looking for what these traits would be. Like, do you have to be really tough, or do you have to be a very good speaker, or do you have to be very caring, or whatever? And if you look at great leaders, I suppose in India, would it be Gandhi? Would Gandhi be one of the great leaders of all time? Probably. What were his traits? And he was very resilient, but he was also a very good listener. So you end up with this huge list of what the traits are. But the problem is that every leader has different traits. So Genghis Khan was a very good leader, but very different to Gandhi, for example. And so if you do a list of personality traits, you just end up with this massive list, and you get very depressed because you probably don't have all of those traits. In fact, you can't. And trait theory has been proved to be rubbish, actually, that there is no classic personality of a leader. So then after trait theory, they went to transactional theory, which says it's what the leader does rather than what they're like. So anybody, whatever you're like, you could do the right things, like thank people and involve people, and you could be a really good leader. And I think that's much better. That really makes sense to me. And you might not be the best leader in the world, but it's a bit like trying to be the best piano player in the world. You have to be born with some talent and then do the work, right? But if you haven't been born with the talent, you could still learn to be really pretty good. And I think leadership's the same. You may not be born with that talent that the really great leaders had, but you can be 8 out of 10. You can learn that, just by thanking people and involving them and things like that. You can be 8 out of 10, which is easily good enough and easily better than most leaders. So I think I like transactional leadership rather than trait-based leadership personally, because it's a very optimistic theory. Anyone can do it. So yeah, that's what I think about leadership. There's a few things in there, aren't there?
Actually, Chris, sir, you have shared a very practical thing, which is leaders should be very grateful or very thankful, actually. And your advices are really very, very practical. And once a leader will follow whatever you have mentioned previously, he is definitely going to rock in his or her industry, right? So, I mean, as you have mentioned that leaders should respond as opposed to react. So what is the difference between reacting and responding to a situation, according to you?
Well, hang on, I'm just going to write something down. I also need to remember to say, yeah, I think responding is how you deal with people. So, if you've got somebody who works for you who needs help, you should notice that and help them and adapt to the type of people you've got.
Observe.
Whereas I think reacting is what you do. So reactive leaders just turn up, and if there's a problem, they fix it. So they don't have a long-term vision. They're not planning ahead. They're just very short-term. Oh, there's this. Somebody's done a bad job. I'll tell them they're rubbish. Or somebody's left. I'll replace them. And they're not thinking, well, why has this happened? Right. So that's reactive. Whereas I think responding is much more. That's about adapting to the type of situation. And so fairness, for example, we all want our boss to be fair. But it's quite difficult to be fair because different people need different treatment in different situations.
Right.
So, if somebody needs more help, you should give them more help. And somebody else might say, well, that's unfair because why is he giving him more time? But actually, it's fair in the end because they're getting what they need, And you might give a more difficult job to a more skilled person. And somebody might say that's unfair, but actually it's more fair because you're giving them a job that's at the same level as where they are. So this person needs this level of job and this person needs this. So fairness, I think, is quite tricky. But I think it's to do with adapting to what the person needs. So there's a little theory called situational leadership, which says that you should adapt to the type of person and the type of job that they've got. So if they're a new person, then you have to tell them how to do the job, really. Whereas if they're a very experienced person, you don't have to tell them how to do the job. You just give it to them. But if they're not very if they're experienced but they're not very motivated, you might want to share the job with them and say, how should we do this? And you'd work quite closely with them. Whereas if they're experienced and really motivated, you don't have to work with them. You just give it to them and say, I'm giving you this job to do. Just do it.
Right.
And then people who are really hopeless, rather than get rid of them, you should coach them And you say, look, let me teach you how to do this. I'll show you. Do you want to learn how to do this? If they say no, you have to get rid of them. But if they say, oh, yeah, I'd love to know how to do it, then you have to spend a bit of time coaching and teaching them how to do it. And you don't just tell them like a new person, here's how you do it. You actually sit with them and say, that's great. Well done. That's really good. Do the next bit. And you kind of build them up and build up their confidence. So the idea of situational leadership is you work out how competent they are and also how motivated they are, and you adapt your style. And then on top of that, it's all very complicated, this, isn't it? But on top of that, there's adapting to people's personality. So some people want to know all the detail of how everything works. So you should do that. You should tell them everything. Whereas, some people want to just get on with it. And you just tell them the main thing, just this, and this, just do it. And they go, great, and off they go. And then they're more like cuddly type people, and they want to be loved. So with them, you have to spend lots of time just checking they're okay. How are you? How are the kids? You're right. And would you like a cup of tea and all that? Whereas some people don't want any of that. They just want to be given the job and left to get on with it. And so there's a bit of adapting to personality type, as well as adapting to people's ability and how motivated they are. So I think, really good bosses, probably they don't mechanically follow all those theories. They just have a feel for how that person wants to be treated, which is quite difficult. We tend to treat people the way we think. So I'm not very cuddly. I like to just get on with work. So I want my boss just to tell me what to do. And if I've got someone who works for me, I want really just to give them the job and say, look, just get on with it. And so I'm not very good at remembering that it's their birthday or remembering they've worked for me for 1 year. So if they've worked for me for a year, really, I should bring in a cake with a candle on and all this. And I forget that. But a really good boss would adapt naturally to all the different types of personality and all the different needs that people have. And I think that's what the really great ones do. But you can learn it, and you can try to make an effort. You can write in your calendar that the person's going to be there for a year and to give them a cake and things, and you can make the effort to adapt, can't you? Rather than just saying, oh, that person's not like me, they're annoying. So, making the effort to adapt to different types of people, I think is something else that the good bosses do. Quite a lot to do, really. I think
Quite long to do it.
Yeah, being a boss, being a really good manager is a full-time job. And I think a lot of managers think, so for example, there's a friend of mine who runs a design company, designing offices, and he spends probably half his time, or 3/4 of his time, probably either designing or going to see customers and selling. And really, he should delegate all of that. So he should delegate the design to his design people and the selling to his salespeople, and he should just be a manager. But he thinks that being a manager is not enough, but that's not a full-time job. But it is a full-time job, and he should spend his whole time just making sure everybody's happy and making sure they're motivated and they're learning things and they understand what they're meant to be doing, and not doing any of the work himself. But he kind of doesn't. He can't get into his head that being a manager is a full-time job, and because I think it is. But it just feels a bit weird when you're used to being a salesperson and you become more senior, or if you're used to being a designer and you become more senior, to have to let go of all the things you're good at and all your reason for living has to go, because now you're doing something different. You're a manager now. And I think people find that really difficult. I found it easy because I started out as an engineer, but I was such a bad engineer that I was quite glad to leave it behind. When I could become a boss and not have to do any design, I was really pleased about that, just to say to everybody else, you do the design now, I'm not doing it. And that felt good to me. But I think if you're good at something, it's quite hard to let it go, when you become a boss. So I think I think delegating is maybe the number one skill actually of a manager.
Right.
I mean, adapting to people and everything is important, but I actually think to let go and just say, I'm going to give you this. And it was easy for me because I was not very good at the job. But if you're good at it, I think it's really hard to let go. And even at home, so I in the garden, my wife can do what she likes, plant anything she likes, cut anything, because I don't care about the garden. So that's easy. And when she cooks things, I don't interfere. She can cook whenever she likes, however she likes, because she's much better at it than me. So that's easy. But if it's something that I know about and that I'm interested in, then I find it really difficult to let go of it. I'm just trying to think of something at home that because when we go on holiday, she does all that. She plans that when we go to visit another country, because she's better at that than me. But at work, I'm a control freak. I won't let anybody interfere with my training courses because I have a very definite idea of what I want it to be like.
Right.
And it's really hard to delegate something that you care about, something that's important to somebody else, even if they're a really good person. I think it takes a big person to delegate and just let other people get on with it without interfering. But that's what the best bosses do, because they know that their time is better used for something more important.
Right.
And all the small stuff they should just let go. So yeah, delegating is important for sure.
And Chris, sir, you have shared actually a very realistic thing that delegation becomes very crucial in terms of being a successful leader, because leader is someone who can get their work done efficiently by their teammates or by their employees. And also and you have shared actually very real example that if something is very close to me, then actually it becomes hard to delegate it. So
Yes.
right. So Chris, sir, moving towards our next question, that what are your advices upon communication skill and how does it plays a massive role in leadership journey according to you?
Oh, yeah. The two things I wrote down, I wanted to remember to say, were delegate and communicate. Because
Right.
I didn't know you were going to ask me that, because
Yeah.
I think delegating is maybe the number one skill, and you can learn that, and it's easy, and you just got to let go. And even if they can't do it quite as well as you, if they can do it like 80% as well as you, let it go. Because the
Right.
last 20% is probably in your mind. You're probably thinking, well, I wouldn't do it like that, but it's fine.
Fine.
But communication is the other big thing. And maybe it's the hardest thing to learn. There's a long time ago, there was some general an army guy who said, he who communicates leads. And of course, now there are lots of women in management, which is great. So it probably should be he or she who communicates leads.
Right.
Or maybe they who communicate lead, but that doesn't sound very good. But anyway, the point is the person who is, if you look at a group of people and you're wondering who is in charge, who's leading, it will be the one who's communicating. Maybe not talking all the time, but every now and then they're going to say, right, everyone, that's good. We've done that. But how are we going to do this? So, maybe they're not even making all the decisions, but they are communicating. They're going, so what do you think? What do you haven't said anything. What do you think? And they're the one who talks. And if you're a bit introvert, if you're a quiet person, it's very difficult to be the leader, because you won't want to talk. And then you will end up. So quite often I'm in a situation where there is no leader. Like maybe we're traveling on the underground in London and we have to decide which station, where do we go? What's the nearest? And I'll be the one who says, I don't think this is a very good plan, because if we go there, it's going to be quite a long walk. And what if it's raining? But this is good. And I'm the one who says, and then everybody will, maybe we do this, maybe do this. And then I go, well, okay, so what are we going to do? Are we doing this or are we doing this? So I tend to end up being the leader just because I talk so much. And so I think you have to do quite a lot of communication if you are the boss. And, we've had a whole load of different prime ministers in England here, mostly not very good. And mainly the problem with them has been they haven't communicated enough. You never see them. So we had one called Gordon Brown, who was very clever, very good with the money, but he never was on telly saying, hey, hello country, this is why we're doing, this is what we're doing, And then we had Theresa May, who again, she was awkward. She didn't really like talking. So now we've got a new prime minister called Keir Starmer, and he's already been on the TV several times. In fact, there were some riots in a couple of towns yesterday, which is pathetic. Some people throwing stuff at the police and things. But Keir Starmer was immediately on TV saying, this is not going to be tolerated, and we're going to find out who they are, and we're going to stop this. And he was right on there. And that's really good. That's proper leadership, because whether or not you agree with what he's saying, I do agree with him, actually. But whether or not you agree, he's at least communicating, and we see him as the leader. So if you're in an office running a team or on a building site or anywhere, you have to communicate. And actually, I would say I'm hoping I can remember all 4 of them. There are 4 things you need to do, 4 meetings. So the first one you should have is a team meeting. I'm going to write these down so I can remember what I said. Sure. The first one you should have is a team meeting. So you should get your direct team together once a week. Maybe more often. I mean, I know that people who run shops, I think they often have a meeting every morning before they open. But normally, once a week, you just get your team together and you say, right, what's happening this week? Who's doing what? And everybody has just 5 minutes to say, well, I've got a visitor coming on Wednesday and I've got this problem I'm a bit stuck on and I'm on holiday on Friday. So everybody knows who's going to be where.
Right.
And if they're stuck, if you can very briefly help them, you do. But you don't go into big problem solving because that's a different type of meeting. So that's the first thing that that the really good communicators should do. They should have that team meeting every week. Okay. And the second thing, so what you could do, you could draw this. If you were if you were a boss, you'd have a team meeting with, I'm going to go for a different color, with your teams. That would be every week. Okay. But also you would be perhaps part of a team. You'd have a boss probably, wouldn't you? You'd have a boss here.
Right.
So they would also once a week have a team meeting that you would just attend. So you would know what's going on at the high level and what's going on in the other departments.
Right.
And then when you have your team meeting, you can tell them a little bit about this is what I'm doing, and we're working. So that would be 2 meetings a week that you would go to. Okay, and these people they might have people who work for them. You know, all these people here. Depends on how big the company is, but they don't come to your team meeting. It's only your direct reports. Okay, but so that's the first thing you should have is a team meeting. And if you don't have one of those, you must start one of those because that's how you keep control of these people because you know everything they're doing now. And it's good for them to talk to each other. They feel like a team and therefore you look like the leader of a team. It's all good. The next thing you should do, this is you here, is you should come and talk to these people here. This is called management by walking about. Every day, you should walk around. So if it's a building site, they could be out, you know, everywhere. They could be, in fact, they might be on several different sites or in even different cities. If it's in an office, they might be in different offices or, you know, on computers or different buildings. But you should try to see everybody every week. So the idea is that you go around and you just say, how are you doing? Everything good? Need any help? And you just check that they're happy. And you can find out whether they know, you know, what's going on as well. Do they, you know, and it makes them feel important as well. So you're not just telling them this is what I'm doing. You're asking them, how are you? How is everything? You know, what do you think of the new tools we've just given out? Are they any good? And they go, oh no, we don't like them. You know, they bought the cheap ones. And you, oh, that's interesting. So you can discover things, things that these people perhaps haven't told you. You know, maybe this person here is not doing a very good job. And you would find that out because you would be talking to the people who work for them. And they'd be saying, oh, well, we're not happy because, you know, we're being neglected or we've been told this or that. And you can go, oh, that's interesting. And in fact, sometimes you see things being done wrongly, but you don't say anything because then you will be taking this person's job away. You just make a note that this is all fine. And then this bit is not very good. And then this is all fine. So then you can have a closer look at what this person is doing. Right. So you do a bit of management by walking about, just to get a feel of everything for real. So that's another form of communication. And some managers find that a bit scary. They go, well, what would I say to everybody if I walked around? What would I, you know, what if they're not very nice to me? You know, what if they say, we think everything's wrong in this company and we don't like it? But you've got to know, you've got to find out, haven't you? Right. So you just chat to them and you get to know them and you ask them, did you have a good weekend? Or how are the kids? Or, you know, how about that cricket match last week? Oh, you know, I thought we were going to, and just chat about whatever they're interested in. You know, have you caught any big fish recently? If you know they're into fishing or whatever. So that there's the team meeting, there's the management by walking about. There's 2 other things which are a bit quicker. One of them is every now and then you should do a big talk to everyone who works for you. And by the way, this big boss here should also do a big talk to everyone, including all of your people. But for your area, you should talk to everybody, not just your team, but everybody, however many layers there are. Probably just once a year, just to say, we've made it through another year. You know, we didn't make as much money as we hoped because of COVID or something, but we've got some plans and we've invested this money in here. And next year we're going to buy a new machine. And you just tell them the big picture of what's going on. Good news or bad news, you have to be honest. Right. And so this sort of big one-off talk, I'm just going to put big for it here, is really important because that shows you as the leader of everyone. And again, if you're not a natural communicator, if you're a bit shy, you won't want to do that. Or I don't want to talk to 100 people, but you must do it. And you can have some PowerPoint slides if it helps you or whatever. But you have to get everyone together and talk to all of them in one go. Some people do it twice a year, some people do it once a year. And I think that's really important. And then the final communication thing is we call it back to the floor. in England because there used to be a TV program. And so what you do is that you spend, I'll put here, either a day or a week doing the job of somebody right at the bottom. So let's say for a week, it should be for a week, really. So for a week, you would go to the building site and you would just help somebody carry bricks or whatever. Or if you're in an office, you would spend a week on the help desk, just answering calls.
Right.
Or so whatever the sort of the real frontline job is, you do that job for a week, and you probably will do it badly. You won't be as skilled as them. You won't be as strong as them if it's a physical job. You know, the building site, you're going to be absolutely exhausted after a week because you're the boss and you're used to wearing a suit, you know. But doing that is really good because it shows that you're prepared to do the real work, and it shows that you want to know what it's like, and you'll learn so much during that week. You learn a lot more than you do when you just walk about every week, every day, because you discover, you know, you're saying, well, these spades are terrible, and they go, well, yeah, we've been trying to tell you that, and you go, well, now I've used it, I actually understand we should never have bought the cheap ones.
Right.
So you discover so much if you do between a day and a week of back to the floor. You could just do a couple of days, and later on you could do a couple of days doing a different job. You know, cleaning or something like that, but you should pick the worst job in the place and do it for between a day and a week, and then when you're back here you make better decisions because you know what it's like. And then when you do a walking about, you know the people really well because you've worked with them for a week, and you can ask them whether it's any better than it was and things. So all these are different types of communicating, because this is the most in deep one, isn't it, where you really spend a close bit of time with them. And this one is quite shallow, but you do it every day. Or nearly every day. And then the big talk is just very occasional. Right. And then the team meeting every week is quite in depth. And if you do all of those, if you imagine you're this person, you know, the boss has, or let's say you're this person, the boss has spent a week working with you in your team. The boss comes past every day. The boss does a talk every year. And also your boss goes to a meeting with the boss every week. So, you know, and then that means that this communication, when you tell them things, they can tell it to them. So every week, this person can tell their team, because remember, they're having a team meeting too, aren't they? Yeah. So they can say, I've just got back from the meeting with my boss, and my boss told me about what's happening in this team. So this information can come here, and then it can come here, and it can come here. So this person is getting information cascading down, as well as from the big talk and from you coming round. Right. Because when information cascades down, it changes a little bit each time. So sometimes by the time it gets to here, it's not quite accurate anymore. You know, this person has got a strategy to, you know, expand into Bangladesh, and this person sort of says we're going to buy somewhere in Bangladesh, and this person says we're going to sell somewhere in Bangladesh, and this person, you know, doesn't. It's changed completely by the time it gets to here. But if you're doing the walking around, you can make sure that the message is correct. Right. And then when you do the big talk, you can also give that message again, and that goes directly from you to them. So it will definitely be correct. Right. So all these different communication methods mean that they really should know what's going on. They can't say, no one ever tells us what's going on, because that's what you always hear, isn't it? You know, if you ask somebody what's the worst thing in your company, biggest problem, they always go communication. No one ever tells us anything. But I think if you do all of that, you know, they can't say that nobody tells them anything. Yeah. And it does take a bit of time. I mean, I think you should spend half an hour every day just doing the walking about. I mean, this is only a couple of days a year. And this big one is only like half an hour once a year. The team meeting is half an hour once a week. So that's quite a bit. But it's the walking about that takes the most time. I mean, that's half an hour every day. Right. But I think it's that important. I think a good leader would do that. It's really important. So that's quite a long answer about communication, isn't it? But I think you have to do all that.
Have to do it right. And actually, the way you have explained all these through the graph, you have shared the advices in regard of communication. That's really practical, and that's actually needs to the industry leaders and company CEOs actually should do the same approach what you have actually elaborated in very depth, right? So
yes. And it's got nothing to do with their personality.
Right.
That's just a mechanical thing that everyone could do.
Right.
And they might have to overcome their fears if they're not a very good communicator, but it'll soon become easy. But everyone could do it. Everyone should do those things. Those 4 meetings, the team meeting, the big talk, the walking about, a day at back to the floor. Everyone could do that. There's no excuse really for not doing
Right,
that.
right.
So yeah, absolutely. I think it's very practical, and
Practical, and yeah,
everyone should be
actually
doing
it is practical and realistic, and it is something which actually a leader can incorporate in his style of leadership, right? So that's really good thing. And Chris sir,
it. Yeah.
moving towards our next very integral question, because we are approaching to the end of the podcast. Otherwise, the way you are explaining things in very depth, it is priceless. And sir, what are your advices upon time management? Like when something feels very urgent, when everything feels urgent, then how to prioritize it, right?
Well, yeah, I didn't expect you to ask me about time management, but I love talking about time management. Yeah. So I've recently been thinking about this, and the thing about time management is the more you think about it, the more tricky it gets, actually. Like project management, there are rules you follow and they work, but time management is a very tricky subject. And so I've been teaching it for 25 years and thinking about it and reading about it. There's lots of really good books on it. And I realized something really simple only a few weeks ago, which is when you come into work or when you get up in the morning, the question really is what should I do next? Right? That's almost the only question. So I've got a huge list of things I want to do. Even today I've got to buy some dog food. I've got to arrange parking for a holiday I'm going to go on, and there's a plant I need to plant out in the garden which somebody's given me, which I don't really want, but it's got to be planted or it'll die. So that's quite urgent. It's not very important. And I've got a whole list of things, and I'm also writing a training course which is more important, but it's not very urgent. I can leave that till tomorrow. So really, the only question is, what shall I do after when I say goodbye to you in a minute? What shall I do? What shall I do next?
Right.
But there is one other question, actually. Once you decided what you're going to do next, is how long should you do it for? So if I decide I'm going to read a book, I'm reading a book at the moment that I'm quite enjoying. So maybe I decide I'm not going to do the planting of the plant or the training course or anything. I'm just going to read my book. How long should I read it for? And then once I finished it, of course, I then go back round to what shall I do next? And how long do I do that for?
Right.
Management is only those two questions. What shall I do next? And how long for? And in the sort of conventional time management theory, what shall I do next is usually down to what's the most urgent thing. Because if there's something that has to be done before lunch, then I'll have to do that next.
Right.
How long you spend on things it's partly just the size of the thing, but it's also to do with, is it important or not? So suppose I decide I'm going to talk to my wife for a bit. The question is, how long for? And that depends on how important my wife is.
Right.
Or it's a bit of an outrageous example. Or suppose I'm going to phone my dad. So my dad's 93. And, so suppose I'm going to phone him. How long shall I talk to him for? And that depends on how important he is. I might think, well, I'll just phone him for a couple of minutes, check he's okay, and then I'll go back to my list. Or I might think, no, I'm going to spend, half an hour chatting to him because he's important. Okay, so we've got urgent and we've got important. But the problem is, if that's your way of deciding, and I think most people never even think about this, they just choose something at random. In fact, I think a lot of people just do the most pleasant thing next. They should, what shall I do next? Shall I do the cleaning or shall I eat chocolate? Oh, I think I'll eat chocolate. And they just do the most pleasant thing. Or but there's got to be a better way than just choosing the nice thing first, isn't there? So what I think is, if you just always chose the most urgent thing, it would look like this. You do a load of urgent things, and then once you'd finished those, you would then do the not very urgent things, which are perhaps the more important things. So writing my next training course is important, but it's not urgent. It can wait another week. And usually things are either important or urgent. They're not usually both. There's very few things that are both. And usually you've already done those. So something like, call the fire brigade because your house is on fire. That's urgent and important, but you will have done that. That's not going to be on your jobs to-do list for a few days.
Right.
So if your rule is, I'll always do the most urgent thing first, you'll end up doing this and you'll never get round to the important things. And that's bad.
Right.
So it seems to me that what we should do is try to get some important things in there. We should really do them like this.
Urgent, important, urgent, important.
Yeah. So when we decide what to do next, we shouldn't always take the most urgent. We should think, what shall I do next? Well,
Right.
I've got something quite important, like planning my training course, or perhaps talking to my wife, because that's important and it's not urgent. I don't have to talk to her right now. So maybe I should think, well, I'm going to talk to my wife for 20 minutes and then I'll do that urgent job of buying the dog food or whatever it is. So I think maybe now the only problem with this is the important things are often big.
Right.
So, writing my next training course is going to take me several days. And I can't just think, well, everything urgent will have to wait.
Right.
Because these things here, these ones probably can't wait very long. Now, because they're urgent, they need to be done quite soon.
Quite.
So I think in the end, the answer is probably to do several urgent things, and then one important thing, and then several urgent things, and then one important thing. And I think, every day you should try and do maybe just 2 or 3 important things. And all the rest is probably going to be urgent because our lives are full of urgent things that we just have to do.
Yes.
But every now and then put an important thing in. And I think that's probably the answer to what should we do next. And then how long for is the urgent things should be obviously as short as possible. Just get them done. And the important things should be longer because we want to do them really well.
Right.
So the important things are, so if you were drawing it as little boxes, you'd have all the urgent things. And then you do an important thing, which would be take quite a long time, and then you go back to the little things, and then you put another important thing. So I think that's how we should decide what to do next.
Right, sir.
But then, of course, time management expands out into a load of other stuff. Saying no to things, and how do you decide what's important? Because quite often, our boss says something's important, but we don't think it's important. So, you should have your own ideas of what's important. You should decide what's important. And that comes to goals, because your personal goals tell you what's important. So, for example, I'm at the moment, I'm filming some courses in India, and we've got, whereabouts are you, by the way? Where are you based? Are you in Mumbai, or where do you live?
I'm in Delhi, actually.
Oh, you're in Delhi. Yeah. So we found a little recording place in Mumbai, but we might do one in Delhi as well. And we're filming people talking about management. And so one of my objectives is to make a whole load of Indian courses, because India is a huge market, of course, much bigger than America. And the only place that's as big is China, but in China, they don't really speak much English.
Right.
But India is like the perfect market because most people speak English, and it's really big. And also it's just a nice country, isn't it? The food's great. The people are great and things. Yeah. So I've got this goal to film a load of Indian courses. And so everything to do with that is important because it contributes to my goal. Whereas I don't have a goal to make courses in China. So if I get an email from somebody in China saying, I might be interested in doing a course, to me, that's not very important because it doesn't help me towards my goal. Whereas if I meet somebody from India, or somebody says, oh, I know somebody you should film, then I'm interested in that. That's important to me because it's going to take me towards my goal. So it's just an example. But if you know what your goals are, you then know what's important and what's not important. And you can just squeeze down or even say no to the unimportant things. And then you can really focus on the important stuff.
Right.
And I think that's the real essence of time management. It's knowing what's important and maximizing the time you spend on important things.
Right.
Which is not too difficult once you know what your goals are. You have to decide what your goals are. That's the big question. But you're quite big into goals, aren't you? I think you talk about goals quite a lot, don't you, on the videos you make?
Right. And actually, sir, I heard this from Elon Musk as well. He said an interviewer asked him that how do you become so successful? Then he said, I write 20 goals on a paper that I want to achieve in a year. I mean, throughout the year. And then I filter 2 or 3 goals from, out of those 20 goals, because he is actually filtering what is important and what is urgent. So you have shared a very practical thing, and it is actually.
Yeah, when you said 20, I was thinking, oh, I don't have 20. I only have 2 or 3. Like these Indian courses, that's one of my goals. I don't have very many. I'm rewriting my time management book because this time management book was written in 1996. I don't know if were you born in 1996? It's a long time ago. Right. So in this book, people didn't even have a mobile phone in 1996. There was just about email and not really even websites in
Right.
1996. So this needs rewriting. So one of my goals this year is to rewrite that and have like second edition proper. And so I only have like 2 or 3 goals this year, really. I guess it's a good idea to start with 20 and filter them. I hadn't really thought about that. I tend to just think, what do I want to do this year? What big things do I want to do?
Right.
And then nothing else matters. Everything else will have to wait, is either squeezed down or actually I say no to it, because I'm really focusing on the 2 or 3 things I want to do. So yeah, I think that's absolutely the definition of time management is maximizing the time you spend on important things, which means you have to know what's important. And that's a difficult question, but it's important to think about. Yeah, definitely.
And Chris sir, actually, we have discussed about leadership, and the way you have explained, I guess it has never been explained this way in even the books, right? And actually, one thing, tomorrow, I guess you are going to have a chat with Mr. Yogesh Chabria, right? Indian motivational speaker.
Yes, Yogesh tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know do you know Yogesh then? You know him?
Yeah, I know. I have actually had a podcast with him as well. Yeah. He has
right. Yeah, he's such a good guy. He's got such a smooth voice.
Right,
I wish I had Yogesh's voice.
I actually asked him that, Yogesh sir, why didn't you try your career in voiceover, right? He said,
yes. Yes, he should be saying,
melodious voice.
This hotel, stay at this hotel. The beds are very comfortable. He's got that great, deep, smooth voice, hasn't he? But obviously a very clever guy as well, very interesting. I'm not quite sure what we're going to talk. I think we're going to talk about happiness tomorrow.
Yeah, he's a founder of Happiness, actually. He talks about happiness.
Yeah, I've become really interested in happiness because it's really closely related to time management.
Right.
Because, if something makes you happy, it's important. And if it doesn't make you happy, it's not important. If you take my dad, my 93-year-old dad, if talking to him makes me happy, then I should spend lots of time talking to him. But if talking to him does not make me happy because he's a horrible person or he's gone a bit mad or something, then in a way it means that time's not important anymore. Luckily, he does make me happy, so it's great. But if he didn't make me happy, then that means that in a way he's not important to me. Now, obviously, there could be a mistake there because when he has died, I might regret and wish I'd spent more time. But only if I can somehow change the relationship so that he then does make me happy. So it might be one of us has to apologize to the other one about something that's happened in the past or something like that. But the point is, if for whatever reason a person doesn't make you happy, then it means that they're not important to you and you shouldn't spend time with them. So I think happiness and importance are really closely related, aren't they? And so, yeah, I think happiness is really, really interesting. How can you get more happiness into your life? Because that's the biggest question of all, isn't it? Because why do anything if it doesn't make you happy?
Right.
I'm only doing this podcast because it makes me happy, because it's fun talking to you. And it also feels good because I hope, I don't think I've ever explained that in a video before. So this will go out to the world and maybe it will help some people to be better bosses.
Surely.
And I'm not even sure whether this is in a video, actually. So it makes me happy to think that the ideas will go out there and it will help people.
Right.
And so I think in the end, you've always got to be thinking, will it make me happy? If having conversations like this didn't make me happy, then I wouldn't do it, or I would charge loads of money for it.
Right.
But even then, I wouldn't want to spend loads of time doing it because although I would be earning money, I would be spending my life on things that were not making me happy.
Right.
And life's too short to do things that don't make you happy, even if you have money in exchange.
Right.
So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what we talk about tomorrow. I don't actually know. We're just going to see where the conversation goes.
And actually, Chris, thank you so much for being the guest of Raunak Rangwal podcast. And actually, thousands of people will make the most of your the way you have explained on the board. Very practical thing it is. It is never explained in the books or Instagram or any YouTube. So it is very important and very crucial, very integral at the same time for all MBA students, for all leaders, for all aspiring entrepreneurs, authors and all. And you are a successful author. So thank you so much for being on the show and taking out your precious time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.